I hadn't set foot on the ranch in over 7 years. Not since the day I drove away with tears stinging my eyes, hands clenched so tight around the steering wheel they left bruises in my palms. I had sworn I'd never come back. But death has a way of pulling you places your heart isn't ready to go. The gravel crunched beneath the truck tires as I rolled past the rusting mailbox that still read Mason Ranch in peeling black letters. The main house stood at the end of the dirt road, its white paint more chipped than I remembered, windows foggy from time and wind. Everything looked smaller. Or maybe I had just grown. I parked under the old oak tree and stepped out into the heat. It was dry, the kind of heat that clings to your skin like a memory. The porch boards creaked under my boots as I approached, keys jangling in my hand. My fingers paused over the knob. 1,000 ghosts stood between me and the door. But I turned it anyway. The house smelled like wood polish and time. My grandfather's scent lingered faintly in the air, leather, coffee, and something sweet, like pipe tobacco. I blinked hard against the sudden sting behind my eyes. The furniture hadn't moved. The picture still hung crooked on the hallway walls. And in the center of it all, silence. The kind that pressed in on you like a held breath. I dropped my bag by the couch and wandered to the back window, pulling the curtain aside. There, in the far paddock, stood a figure that hadn't changed at all. Black as midnight. Broad-shouldered, thick-necked, eyes like two polished stones. Thunder. I should have expected he'd still be here. My grandfather never let go of the horses he loved. But seeing Thunder again, alive, strong, and unmistakably real, did something to my chest I hadn't prepared for. I stared at him through the glass, hoping he wouldn't look back. But he did. One turn of the head. One steady gaze. And I was 16 again, watching him rear up in the round pen, untamed and glorious. Still the king, I muttered under my breath. The next morning, I avoided the barn. Instead, I made coffee and sat on the porch steps, watching the morning mist rise off the field. Thunder was by the fence line, unmoving. Not grazing. Not walking. Just watching. I took a sip of coffee and pretended not to care. But I did. By noon, I finally found the nerve to walk out to the paddock. Just to check on things, I told myself. Fencing. Waterline. Nothing more. Thunder lifted his head as I approached, ears flicking forward. Easy, I murmured, more to myself than to him. He didn't move. Didn't even blink. Just watched me cross the field like I was a stranger in his kingdom. And maybe I was. I stopped 3 feet from the gate. That was close enough. Still hate people, huh? I said. A twitch of one ear. He snorted once, then turned his head away. Dismissed. Like I wasn't worth the trouble. Something in me stung at that. I used to be someone here. Used to belong. I turned to leave, and then, just to spite myself, I called back. I'm not here for you, you know. A silence. Then the low, distant thud of a hoof against the dirt. I spent the rest of the afternoon going through my grandfather's papers. Deeds. Bank letters. Old feed invoices. And a will, folded neatly inside a manila envelope. I didn't need to read it to know what it said. He'd left the ranch to me. The house. The land. The debts. And Thunder. That night, I couldn't sleep. The wind howled through the eaves like it remembered things I didn't want to. I lay awake in the guest room, my old childhood room, staring at the shadows on the ceiling. Then I heard it. A sound. Dull. Heavy. A hoof. Then another. I sat up slowly, heart pounding. More hooves. Not a run. A walk. And then, silence. I crossed to the window and pulled back the curtain. There, under the moonlight, Thunder stood by the back porch. Not by the barn. Not by the fence. By the house. Staring right at me. I went outside barefoot. The wind was cooler now, carrying the scent of sage and dry grass. Thunder didn't move. Just stood there, massive and still. We looked at each other for a long time. Neither of us said a thing. Finally, I whispered, "Why are you here?" He blinked slowly. Didn't move. Didn't run. Didn't break the moment. And then, as if remembering something, he turned. Walked back toward the barn. Every step slow. Measured. I stood there, alone on the porch, arms wrapped around myself. And realized. He had waited for me. All this time. I didn't go near the barn the next day. Not because I was afraid, or at least that's what I told myself, but because I didn't want to break whatever fragile moment had passed between us the night before. Thunder had come to the house, stared up at my window, stood so still in the moonlight, I thought he might vanish if I looked away. And then he had walked away like he'd said what he came to say. I kept busy instead. Sorted through boxes in the attic. Made a grocery run into town. Called the attorney to confirm the final transfer of the land. All the things that made me feel in control. But even as I checked items off my list, part of my mind kept drifting back to the barn. To the sound of his hooves on the porch steps. To the way his shadow had stretched across the yard like something half-remembered from a dream. By late afternoon, the air had turned still again. Storm season in this part of the state always brought strange shifts, moments where the sky held its breath and the land pressed against you, asking if you were ready for something more. I wasn't. But the barn was calling anyway. I walked out just before dusk, keeping my steps slow, unthreatening. Thunder stood in the far paddock. Grazing. Or at least pretending to. His head lifted the moment I touched the gate. I stopped. That same stare met me again, heavy, thoughtful, unreadable. It wasn't hostile. But it wasn't welcoming either. He was deciding. I could feel it. I stepped inside the fence. He didn't move. Not away. Not toward me. Just stayed. I walked along the edge of the field, keeping a wide arc, like two strangers in the same room trying not to speak. I didn't bring treats. Didn't whistle. Didn't ask anything of him. Just stayed in his orbit for a while. That was all I could handle. That night, I found an old music box in my grandfather's desk drawer. It was shaped like a tiny barn, with two carved horses that spun in a slow circle when the lid opened. I remembered it from childhood, the gentle tune, soft and lilting, always playing from the windowsill while I brushed my hair before bed. I wound it. Set it on the kitchen counter. And listened as the song played. Then I heard him. A heavy step on the back porch. Then another. I turned, heartbeat spiking. Thunder stood outside the screen door again. Watching. Listening. Drawn to the music. I didn't open the door this time. I didn't even move. Just stared back through the thin mesh between us. He snorted once, soft and low, like a sigh. Then he turned and walked back into the dark. This became our ritual. Every evening, I'd wind the music box. And almost without fail, thunder would appear. Sometimes for seconds. Sometimes for minutes. He never crossed the porch threshold. But he never broke eye contact either. It was unnerving. Unsettling. And deeply, quietly comforting. Like he was trying to remind me of something I'd forgotten how to carry. On the fifth night, the wind picked up just after sundown. I stepped onto the porch with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders, cradling a mug of tea. The storm hadn't arrived yet, but the air pulsed with its approach. Thunder was by the fence again. Not close. Not far. Still. Waiting. "I don't know why you keep coming back," I said aloud. He lifted his head slightly, ears pricking forward. "I'm not your person." A pause. "You're not mine either." The wind curled around my ankles like smoke. "I'm not the girl who used to ride bareback through the meadow." I'm not the one who laughed when you spooked at butterflies. My throat tightened. I'm not her anymore. Thunder took a step forward. Just one. I took a step back. Reflex. Not fear. Just habit. He stopped. And in that moment, I saw something in his eyes I hadn't expected. Hurt. Not anger. Not aggression. Just something wounded. I swallowed hard. I'm sorry, I whispered. But the wind carried the words away before they could reach him. That night, I dreamt of my grandfather. We were standing in the barn together. He was younger than I remembered, face less lined, eyes sharp but kind. Thunder stood in the stall beside him, calm and quiet. He's not waiting for someone like you, Grandpa said. I turned to him, confused. Then who? He smiled. You. I woke up before dawn. Shaken. Breathless. And already moving. I pulled on boots over pajama pants, threw on a jacket, and stepped outside. The wind had died. The moon hung low, heavy with light. And Thunder was at the fence. Like he'd never moved. This time, I walked straight toward him. He lifted his head, watching me come. I didn't stop. Didn't second guess. Didn't retreat. I reached out, hand flat. He leaned forward. And touched me. His muzzle pressed into my palm, warm, solid, real. And I felt something in me shift. Not break. Not snap. Just move. Like a frozen river cracking under spring thaw. We stood like that for a long time. No words. No sound. Just breathing. Two creatures who had spent years forgetting how to trust. Remembering. The next morning, I found his bridle hanging on the old barn wall. It hadn't been touched in years. Dust clung to the leather like regret. But underneath it all, it was still strong. Like him. Like maybe me. I didn't ride him that day. But I led him to the round pen. Walked the circle. Let him follow. No reins. No pressure. Just steps. One after the other. Later, I found myself standing in my grandfather's office. Looking at the photo of him and Thunder from years ago. Both smiling, yes, smiling, like the world was something they could outrun. I picked it up. Turned it over. In faded ink, he'd written. She'll come back. He'll know when. Just give them time. I sank into the old chair behind the desk. Set the photo beside me. And for the first time since returning, I felt like I was home. The storm rolled in without warning. It didn't announce itself with the usual signs, no slow buildup of clouds, no gentle stirring of wind. Just one long, deep rumble across the sky, like the earth was grinding its teeth. Then came the wind. And the rain. And everything that followed. By the time I noticed the change, it was already too late to prepare. I stood in the kitchen watching the first few drops hit the window pane, thinking it would pass. A summer storm, I told myself. Nothing new. Nothing dangerous. But the light outside vanished in minutes, swallowed by thick gray clouds that moved like waves across the hills. And then the power cut out, just a low hum flickering away to silence. That was the first moment I felt the fear rise. Not fear of the storm itself. Fear of the memories it stirred. I grabbed the flashlight from the hallway drawer and made my way to the back porch. From there I could see the barn, barely lit by the low glow of the motion sensor above the side door. The paddock was empty. Thunder was inside. I had made sure of it earlier that evening, locking both stall and barn doors. He'd been calm all day, more than calm, even. Attentive. Present. And I'd started to believe we were beginning to understand each other again. The wind picked up suddenly, slamming against the side of the house with such force it rattled the windows. Trees swayed like dancers losing rhythm. I stepped outside, the air thick and electric, hair whipping across my face. And that's when I saw it. A single flash of movement. A dark shape, heavy, fast, vanishing behind the barn. My breath caught in my throat. Thunder? I ran toward the paddock gate, struggling to see through sheets of rain now falling sideways. The barn door was swinging on its hinges, wide open. Wide open. I had latched it. I knew I had latched it. Unless he had done it. The wind roared in my ears as I stumbled into the barn. Empty stall. Wet floor. Thunder was gone. Thunder! I shouted into the storm. No answer, only thunder of another kind, the real kind, rolling through the heavens like judgment. I turned in every direction, but the world was washed in gray. Trees bent under pressure. The grass lay flat. I could barely make out the fence line. And then I saw him. Just for a moment. Standing at the edge of the yard, silhouetted by lightning. Facing the house. Not the field. Not the woods. The house. And my heart stopped. I ran back through the mud, nearly slipping on the porch steps. The screen door banged open behind me as I rushed into the kitchen, leaving a trail of wet footprints across the tile. I didn't care. I didn't stop. Because I couldn't breathe. I had tried so hard to keep it all together. To keep everything buried. My grandfather's death. The grief I'd packed away in boxes like his old receipts. The guilt for not being there when he passed. The shame for leaving this place behind. And now, all of it came crashing down like the storm outside. I dropped to the floor beside the old kitchen table and covered my face with both hands. And finally, I broke. I don't know how long I stayed there. Sobbing. Curled in on myself like I could somehow protect what had already shattered. But I heard it. The sound I will never forget. The creak of wood under heavy weight. And then, a violent crack. The back door flung open. Slammed against the wall. And standing in the doorway. Thunder. Wet. Wild-eyed. He had kicked open the door. I stared up at him in disbelief. His chest heaved with every breath, nostrils flaring, mane soaked and clinging to his neck. He stood in the kitchen like he belonged there, like he'd done this 1,000 times. And yet, he didn't move further. He just stood there. Looking at me. Like I was the one lost. Like he had come to find me. I couldn't speak. Could barely breathe. My whole body trembled as I slowly stood, wiping my face with the sleeve of my sweatshirt. And still, he waited. I took one step toward him. He didn't flinch. Another. Still. By the third step, I was close enough to reach out, and I did. My fingers found his cheek, cold and rain-soaked, and I pressed my forehead to his. He was real. Solid. Warm. And somehow, so calm. More than I'd ever seen him. Even after bursting through a locked door in the middle of a storm. "I'm here," I whispered. And somehow, the house, the storm, the grief, all of it softened. Because he was here too. I led him back out into the rain, one hand resting gently on his neck. No rope. No halter. Just steps. His hooves clopped against the wooden planks of the porch, down the path, through the flooded grass. We reached the barn. He walked inside on his own. Straight into the stall. No resistance. No wildness. Just trust. I secured the door again, this time double-checking every bolt. He turned once to look at me. Then lowered his head. And began to eat. Back at the house, I changed into dry clothes and made a cup of tea with shaking hands. My eyes kept drifting to the back door. Still cracked from where he had kicked it open. And I laughed. A sound full of disbelief and awe. He had broken through a locked door. Just to find me. Later that night, I wrote in my grandfather's journal. Not just a line. A whole page. Tonight, Thunder kicked open the door not out of fear, not to run but to come to me. He didn't just surprise me. He reminded me that I'm not alone, that I never was. And as I drifted to sleep with the rain easing to a lull outside the window, one truth settled quietly into my bones. I had been waiting for someone to break through my walls. And somehow, it wasn't a person. It was him. The sun rose like an apology after the storm. The air was crisp, cool, washed clean. The trees stood a little taller. The sky stretched wide and blue. But the house still bore the mark of the night before. The back door hung slightly crooked on its hinges, a splintered line where Thunder had kicked it open. I didn't fix it right away. I didn't need to. That door had been closed for too long anyway. Thunder was already awake when I walked out to the barn. He looked up from his hay as I entered, ears forward, eyes clear. "Morning," I said quietly. He blinked. I took a deep breath. "So, you broke into my house." A low snort. "I guess I should be mad." He stepped closer to the stall gate. "But I'm not." Another step. I think you did what no one else could." I opened the latch. He didn't rush out. He waited. Letting me lead. We walked around the pasture in slow loops, the morning dew soaking my boots, birdsong carrying between us. I didn't try to control him. Didn't test him. Just existed beside him. One step at a time. And for the first time in years, I felt a rhythm I thought I'd lost. Not just with a horse. With myself. Back at the barn, I found my grandfather's old grooming kit in the tack room. Everything was still inside, brushes worn smooth, curry comb cracked at the edge, hoof pick with a bent tip. I brought it out and sat beside Thunder in the aisle. "Do you remember this?" I asked. He sniffed the box, then huffed softly. I took it as a yes. Grooming him was like opening a door I'd forgotten existed. Every stroke brought back memories, his first ride, his first show, the way Grandpa used to talk to him like he was a person. "You still have the softest coat," I said, brushing under his belly. He shifted his weight and leaned gently into me. I smiled. I missed this. Later that afternoon, I wandered back into Grandpa's office. Something tugged at me to search, not for bills or legal documents this time, but memories. I opened drawers I hadn't touched yet, rummaging past yellowing papers, old notebooks, and finally, something heavy wrapped in cloth. It was a leather-bound journal, thick and worn, the edges of the pages curled with age. On the first page, in my grandfather's unmistakable handwriting. Thunder, training notes, observations, and, well, thoughts. I sat down in his chair, the journal heavy in my lap, and turned the page. Day 1, he's got fire. Too much of it. But I like that. Means he'll never be anyone's puppet. Might take time. Der stepped forward and touched his nose to my arm. And in that moment, I believed him. He did know. All along. The next morning, I tacked him up. Carefully. Slowly. He stood still the entire time, ears twitching at the sound of the buckles, eyes calm. I hadn't ridden in years. Not really. But I didn't feel afraid. Not this time. Not with him. We walked to the round pen together. No one else around. Just the two of us. The gate creaked as I swung it open. Thunder stepped inside without hesitation. I climbed the mounting block. Paused. Breathed. Laid my hand on his withers. He didn't flinch. Didn't shift. And I swung my leg over, settling into the saddle like it was where I'd always belonged. The first few steps were stiff. Awkward. Like trying to speak a language I hadn't used in a long time. But then. We found it. That rhythm. That breath between motion. That space where fear couldn't find me. We didn't canter. Didn't jump. Just walked. Slow circles in the morning sun. And I cried, not because I was sad. Because I had come home. Back at the barn, I untacked him with trembling fingers. He stood beside me, still and patient. "Thank you," I whispered, stroking his neck. "You remembered everything." That evening, I sat on the porch with the music box open beside me, its tune drifting into the dusk. Thunder stood by the fence, ears forward. Waiting. He didn't come to the house this time. He didn't need to. I went to him. And we stood there, woman and horse, history between us like a bridge, under the fading sky, not speaking. Not needing to. Just breathing. Just being. The morning after our first ride felt different. The air was warmer. The wind gentler. And for the first time in weeks, maybe years, I woke up without the heavy weight on my chest. No dread. No ache. Just breath, and light, and the smell of fresh hay drifting through the open window. Thunder was already in the pasture when I stepped outside, his black coat shimmering in the sun like polished stone. He raised his head as I approached the fence. "Good morning," I said, resting my arms on the top rail. He blinked. Then went back to grazing, which I took as a casual "you're late." I smiled. After breakfast, I wandered into Grandpa's office again. The leather-bound journal still lay on the desk where I'd left it, a thin layer of dust already trying to claim it back. But today I wasn't here for the journal. Something had been bothering me since the night of the storm. A memory, fuzzy, unfinished, about a box in the barn loft. Grandpa's voice echoing in my mind. "When the time comes, you'll know where to look." I hadn't understood it then. But now. I did. The barn loft was exactly how I remembered it, old crates stacked in corners, hay bales lined neatly in rows, and the sun filtering through the wooden slats like golden threads. I climbed the ladder slowly, each step creaking beneath my boots. In the far back corner, behind a stack of old feed bags, I found it. A cedar chest. Heavy. Worn. Etched with the initials JM. My grandfather's. I knelt beside it, heart thudding, and opened the lid. Inside were things I hadn't seen in years. A faded red ribbon from Thunder's first show. A photo of me at 13, beaming in a dusty helmet, Thunder standing proud beside me. And beneath it all, a small, black USB drive in an envelope labeled, "For Joe, when she's ready." My hand shook as I took it back to the house. The power had returned, but the silence in the house was louder than before as I plugged the drive into Grandpa's old laptop. There was only one file. A video. I clicked play. The screen flickered, then steadied. My grandfather sat in the barn, the light golden behind him. Thunder stood just out of frame, his flank occasionally brushing against the wooden wall. Grandpa looked tired. But his eyes were clear. Focused. He smiled. "Hey, kiddo. If you're watching this, it means I'm gone. And you came back. I knew you would." I sat back, tears already stinging. "I know you've been carrying a lot. I know you blamed yourself. For leaving. For not being here at the end. But Joe. I never held that against you. Life is messy, grief is messy, and sometimes the only way to heal is to walk away first." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Thunder's not just a horse. You know that. Well, I don't know what he is. But I've never met another like him. He sees people. He saw me. He saw you, even when you didn't want to be seen." Thunder's head appeared briefly in the frame, nudging Grandpa's shoulder. He chuckled. "He's been waiting. Not for me. For you. I trained him for you, Joe. Not because you needed another horse. Because you needed a reason to remember who you are. He's stubborn. Strong. Brave. Like you. He's yours. Always was." There was a long pause. Grandpa's smile faded into something softer. Don't hide from the world, Joe. Don't hide from yourself. When you're ready, ride him. Not to run. Not to compete. Just to feel. The screen went black. I sat in silence for a long time. Then I stood, grabbed Thunder's halter, and walked back to the barn. The air was still warm, but a breeze had picked up, tugging gently at the trees. Thunder met me at the gate, ears forward. He knew. I clipped the lead rope on, but he didn't need it. He followed me willingly, step for step, until we reached the tack room. I didn't saddle him. Didn't bridle him. Just slipped a simple rope halter over his head. And we walked. The pasture was quiet. No sound but the wind in the grass and the occasional chirp of a distant bird. I led him to the small hill behind the barn, the one Grandpa always said had the best view of the valley. And then I climbed onto Thunder's back. Bareback. No reins. Just trust. We stood at the top for a moment, looking out at the land. It was beautiful. Unchanged. Endless. I leaned forward, my hands resting lightly on his neck. Let's go, I whispered. He moved. We didn't gallop. We glided. Down the hill, through the tall grass, wind rushing past my face, the sky opening wide above us like a blessing. I didn't think. Didn't worry. I felt. Every muscle in his back. Every breath we shared. Every piece of myself returning, bone by bone, heartbeat by heartbeat. We reached the far fence and slowed to a walk. Thunder snorted, shaking his head. I laughed. Laughed like I hadn't in years. Laughed so hard I had to grip his mane just to stay upright. The sun began to set as we turned back toward the house. The sky burned golden pink, and Thunder's shadow stretched long beside us. When we reached the barn, I slid off his back and rested my forehead against his. Thank you, I whispered. He exhaled slowly, like he understood. Later that night, I sat on the porch with Grandpa's journal open in my lap and the music box playing beside me. Thunder stood by the fence again, just watching. I read aloud. Some doors open on their own, some are pushed. But some, the important ones, need to be kicked wide open. And when they are, they change everything. I looked at Thunder. You knew exactly what you were doing, didn't you? He blinked. Tossed his head. Then turned toward the stars.